Hi, and welcome back to Carl and Rick Talk Risk. Rick, how are you?
Unbelievable. I am
Awesome.
awesome. It's a foggy Friday, and for a good old boy born and raised in St. John, New Brunswick, there's nothing better than the foggy start to a weekend. It doesn't
Foggy,
get better than this. And
foggy
yes, I
Friday.
realize that in many countries that makes me certifiably insane, but it is what it is.
I understand. We had our hottest day this week. It was about 120% humidity. It was excruciating. I'm ready for fall, and it's a foggy Friday here too. So in the Netherlands. So we're separated by an ocean, but same weather. Um, Well, Rick, we, as the viewers know already, we share book recommendations, articles, stuff like that. I've got a pile of the books in front of me right now, and one of the first ones I was really interested in getting into was Same as Ever by Morgan Housel. Now, I haven't read his previous book, The Psychology of Money. I know it was very popular in personal finance circles, including FIRE, financial independence,
Yep.
retire early. It was highly recommended there. At some point, I'll get to it, but I did read a little bit about his background. It sounds like he was a financial journalist for a while. I think he was in the industry as well. Um, Knows his stuff. Good writer. I really enjoyed his writing. Um, at one point, I was reading it, and my wife came by and said, That looks like an airport book. Where did you get that from?" And I was like, "It's actually his writing is fantastic. It's dense. He doesn't dwell on points. He's always got a story to back something up. I really enjoy his style."
Yeah, actually, the comment about the airport book, I just want to jump in there.
Sure.
Um, uh, it's very easy, I think, to overlook his writing because he's so
Yeah.
good at writing. Um, it seems like it's la di da di da di da di da, but it's
Mm.
actually not.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Uh, Basically, everything he says has been said by others
Sure.
or created by others, but it's really hard to find someone who's unbelievably original
Yeah.
or totally 100% original. But the way he puts it together, it actually makes for very easy reading, which makes it easy to underestimate
Yeah.
the points that are being made, which I think is a sign of a terrific writer. I
Yeah.
that is someone who really knows their thing. And this comes to a point that we talked about before about risk management. Um, Oftentimes, experts think that they have to make things sound really, really um, obscure, complicated, complex, out there. I've got to study this sentence for hours to get the true depth of the meaning of it.
Mm.
And that's just pure bullshit.
Yeah.
Okay, a really good writer um, writes so someone with a grade five education can understand it,
Yeah.
and I applaud him. So yeah, it might seem like an airport book. Man, I'd love to have an airport book. And I think that this is an airport book with actually some meat to it.
Yeah, exactly. You actually beat me to my punch because the chapter I want to focus on is exactly about what you just said, that people don't pay for simplicity, but it's a very valuable thing in the world. But I want to come back on something you mentioned because he actually has a chapter on this point that you made, that he's not entirely original about any of the points he makes. And one chapter is dedicated to people who storytell better than others. And his example is Yuval Noah Harari, who's written a lot of history books recently, which has really brought history back into the zeitgeist and made it more interesting for people. And he quotes Harari in the book, and Harari says, "Nothing I say is original. I haven't discovered anything." I just have a narrative style that people seem to enjoy. He fully admits that, but that is valuable in the world, and that's
Yeah.
valuable to risk managers who can tell good stories.
You know,
So,
I have to make a confession to our listeners. A, I do not have a copy of the book. Uh, B, while I'm not a fire advocate, I am cheap. So I do use uh, the library to great extent. So it's been a long time since I read the book, but I do have my healthy little index cards uh, for the book. So, you know, see, I make all my notes on index cards. So while I might not have the explicit book in front of me and thus appear to be lost, uh, I
yeah,
I now recall that chapter. Yep.
yeah, nice. Um, yeah, okay. So the chapter I want to talk about a little bit, Rick, and then maybe get your thoughts on yeah, on something I say or another chapter. I do have the book with me at the moment. The chapter is trying too hard. There are no points awarded for difficulty. And his opening anecdote is about cancer research. And he mentions the National Cancer Institute, um, and kind of an admission by a director there saying, we would do a lot better job with cancer if we focused on preventive healthcare, but just simple stuff, making sure people smoke less, eat better foods, a whole bunch of preventive stuff would have a huge impact on, saving lives and so on. But that's not sexy. That doesn't get grant funding. That doesn't get research funding. It and so you can say you want to defeat cancer as much as you want, but without focusing on that, you're having a much more limited impact. That's one point. The other point he kind of makes is that the real experts in these fields, and this is where we touch on kind of risk managers and financial people, because I think we fall in this category. They don't want to solve simple problems. They don't want simple solutions to things. We inherently enjoy complex stuff. We want to tackle difficult problems, and the assumption is that the answers are very complex as well.
Actually, I just got to jump in here.
Yeah,
I think that we have to uh, make one little nuanced point here. People don't want to solve difficult problems. They want to appear to be solving difficult problems. Big, big, big difference.
right.
And so what they do is they actually work on Mickey Mouse stuff and make the answers or solutions that they build appear complicated, and they make that they refilled their refillable pen. They make it seem like they've solved the you know cancer.
Yeah,
Um, so
yeah,
continue on. Sorry to interrupt, but I think that most people, and I'm not trying to be cynical here or negative here or pessimistic here, but I think that uh, we all started out saying that we're going to solve great things and change the world, but in reality, we very quickly go to uh, what's quickly solvable. I'll just give you a very specific example. Okay, I like to do a Sudoku or two or three, before going to sleep at night. Okay, and yes, occasionally I do like doing the very hard ones, and generally speaking, I kind of lean that way. But the reality is I really look forward to my Sudoku every night. And actually, it's more Ken. But if even the least little bit tired, I will never ever go for the hard ones. I always go for the ones that are just enough to push me a little bit, but not the ones that I know that are going to actually make me work. It's and I think I'm not alone in that attitude on anything. I,
yeah.
that's the whole basis of procrastination in the world. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
I interrupted your
No,
point. I didn't mean to. So continue on with your point.
that should be the name of the podcast. Interruption. I mean, that's no, that you got me thinking. I don't know if it's in this chapter or if it's in an article I read this week. But the person was making the point that, why do we keep trying to solve a problem when it's clear we should move on, that there's value somewhere else? And his one word answer was, well, there's budget for it. I remember what it was. It's by a Dutch researcher who looks into failure. And in the past, one of his roles was chief failure officer at ABN AMRO, one of the big Dutch banks. And he was quite literally trying to help people understand, um, the value of failure, what you learn out of it, that individuals don't necessarily fail just because a project fails. You could have done a wonderful job. It could have been, not set up for success. Um, but yeah, it's good to realize that at some point you should probably set a cap on how far you get into something, that there's limited value, kind of take a step back from things. Um, so yeah, anyway, you got me thinking about that, Rick. He does point out a couple of interesting examples. I really like these, and we're readers, so I think they speak to us. The U.S. Constitution, 7,591 words. The average mortgage contract, over 15,000 words. Apple's iCloud Terms of Service Agreement, 7,300 words. And the US tax code, Rick, you've got to take a guess at that one.
Oh, no, I'm not it. I'd put out a Google number of words into it, and I'd probably still fall short.
Yeah, yeah, it's the order of magnitude. If you get that, you're winning. 11 million. 11 million words. I mean, yeah, fascinating. So he points out great speeches too. He points out Winston Churchill's great speeches during World War II. How, I mean, he basically rallied his country and a lot of the world into defeating Nazism. A fantastic example that, he was. It didn't take elaborate speeches and data and just a guy with a cigar and a peace sign.
Hey,
You
you do a
know,
lot with a cigar, okay?
I thought that
Cigar creates genius.
exactly. Yeah. So honestly, Rick, I didn't have a lot more to say on that. I just think, like all of his chapters, it's a nice change of perspective. It helps you step back. Um, and probably the last thing I want to say about Housel's book is there's an interesting list of questions at the back. He gives you all these anecdotes and everything, and you can move through this book really fast. In a day or two, you can finish it quite easily. But I like that right at the end, he kind of says, "Well, how are you going to put this into action? You've read this book, you read the anecdotes, you probably understood a lot of them, but like what can you actually take away from this?" And he gives a list of about 20 questions, and I'm still thinking about them. They really some of them really stumped me. Stuff like, who has the right answers, but I ignore because they're not articulate. What is a problem that I think applies only to other countries, industries, careers that will eventually hit me? Now that one is timely. Um, who do I look up to that is secretly miserable? So anyway, he gives some really interesting questions that just, make you apply some of what you've learned from him, make you think about things a little differently. And yeah, like we said, his writing style is good, and it's not supposed to be a frivolous throwaway book. It's actually supposed to make you think differently about the worlds, which is interesting.
It should make you think differently. You know, I got a couple of very different spins out of the book.
Hmm.
One was there's an overall theme that runs throughout the book that I think that is very relevant to risk management. That theme, and it's, I'm going to quote from one of the very first pages of the book, is we're very good at predicting the future, except for the surprises, which tends to be all that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is an overriding theme that goes through the book, that which is why I recommended it to you, and I recommend it to all risk managers, because that theme kind of weaves through like a melody in a Beethoven symphony. It comes up again and again and again. So uh, at one point I can't remember the anecdote, but he talks about people don't want accuracy; they want certainty.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is in risk management, it's far better to give a very precise answer than to give a nuanced, ambiguous answer.
Yeah.
I think I might have talked about this story once on podcast before, so apologies, but I was sitting on a trading desk and my boss was next to me on the phone with someone. And he turns to me and he goes, "Rick, the return of the stock last year was 7.2%. What's its vol?" And I'm there, on the keyboard on the Bloomberg checklist, ready to go, type in the ticker so I can calculate the vol. I go, "What's the stock, John? What's the stock?" He goes, "Damn it, the return was 7.2%. Like, so I gave back the answer 14.996. Okay, and he thought I was brilliant. Okay, I just totally pulled a number out of the air, which of course was total bullshit because you can't calculate a volatility off of a single return.
Yeah.
Okay, he thought I was brilliant. Okay, and that's the people want the accuracy, not what's necessarily right. I also he comes back and he quotes Bertrand Russell, and of course this is the Dunning-Kruger effect that we've talked about before, which we talked about previously when talking about communicating and marketing risk, and we talked about Tedford's studies that show that those who appear to be the most confident are generally the ones who are the most wrong, and those who appear to be tentative and vague and wishy-washy, no
Mm-hmm.
one listens to them, but they're actually the ones that best understand the situation. So the Russell quote, which should be kind of stamped in every risk management department on the walls, is the fundamental cause of trouble is that in the modern world, the stupid are cocksure while the intelligent are full of doubt. And it relates to uh, how we market risk management, how we think about risk management, how we think about risk management gurus, how we think about those. Getting back to your question, how we think about those who we believe are intelligent versus those who actually are intelligent, versus those who are superficial thinkers versus those who are thinking deeply about things.
Yeah.
Uh, those were a couple of the themes. There's several others. I love his line: corporate inefficiency bullshit is ubiquitous, and it just comes down to a matter of how much bullshit is optimal. Uh, do nothing may be the best answer, but to do something is the career
Yeah.
incentive. I kind of touched upon that. And then ultimately, uh, one of the one of the other things is, and again, I quote from the book, we can see and measure just about everything in the world except people's moods, fears, hopes, grudges, goals, triggers, and expectations. And going back to the quote that I talked about at the beginning of this rant, we're very good at predicting the future except for the surprises, which tend to be all that matters.
Yeah.
I would argue in risk management, all that matters are people's moods, fears, hopes, grudges, goals, triggers, and expectations.
Yeah.
Everything else is everything else we can measure perfectly
Yeah.
with great accuracy, but not exactly a lot of risk management usefulness.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, you see that with the latest stock market wobble last, what was it, 2 weeks ago now?
Yeah.
There really wasn't a reason behind it, right? I mean, suppose U.S. payrolls came in a bit lower than expectation. Ooh, it was, panicky investors that thought everybody else was going to respond to it, so they responded to it. It's very no fundamentals behind it, so very interesting. Yeah, so I think maybe closing thoughts. I mean, yeah, definitely a good read, good risk management read. Everybody else is focused on trends and predicting, and Morgan Housel says, forget that. That some things are the same as ever. They will always be that way. And if you understand those, that is the best. He did have one quote at the beginning that's coming to my mind that I want to get out because I think it kind of sums us up very well. Yeah, it was by a person I'd never heard of, Jane McGonigal. I've learned an important trick to develop foresight. You need to practice hindsight. I love that. Very nice. Yeah, so
But
get
again,
out
I
there and
would
read it.
caution about doing risk management by watching your rearview mirror,
Yeah. Yeah.
which a lot of organizations do, which is probably the major function in how your chief failure officer is treated.
Yeah. A rear view mirror that doesn't look very far as well. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, good recommendation, Rick. I'm sure we're going to touch on a whole bunch of these other books. They all look very interesting. But for
And by
now,
the way, if readers have a book that they want us
oh,
to rant on, hey, post it in
yeah.
the comments.
Yeah.
I'm just about finished reading a set of books that a listener commented on social anthropology, and I'm going to write them a more formal response. But if they're listening to this, yes, I greatly appreciate those recommendations. Almost finished reading, watching the English, and I read the other textbook on social anthropology. Very, very useful. And you'll see the results of that in my next book as well. So, yeah, if readers have a book that they want us to rant about, hey, we'll go for it.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. Excellent, Rick. Well, good chatting with you as always. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you're watching this probably. Yeah, and we'd love to hear from you, your book recommendations. But until next time, it's been Carl and Rick Talk Risk.
Have fun, everyone. Enjoy the fog.